I'm not going to do the intro.
Why not?
Well, that's it. We'll leave all that in, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we've got two new panelists. Ollie Dugmore and Ed Campbell are away today. Ed is in Norwich.
Yes, he is.
Ollie is recovering from a stonking debut on Politics Live yesterday. Yeah, it's fair to say that, isn't it?
Yeah, it was very good.
Yeah. So,
Great job.
joined by Laura.
Hello.
Well, what's your title?
Producer Laura, I guess.
Yeah, producer Laura. Anything else we can give her? Producer.
Have we given you Token Scott in the past?
I think so. I
Yeah,
think that was
when
the
you were
first time.
replacing Ed.
Yeah.
Well, how are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Yeah, great.
I'm feeling a little bit nervous to be on this side of the camera, but excited.
But you've been on it before. You were here for the extended 4-hour pubcast.
I have, but we had 2 drinks before I came on there, so I felt a bit better about it.
Good
We've only
reception
had
then.
one.
Yeah, it was very nice.
Important question. How were the fish?
They're doing so well, and my flatmates love them. I have like 2 other flatmates, and we all take care of them. And
Really?
they seem very happy. Yeah.
Oh.
Love that.
Person
Sure.
Glove or Paul and Joe?
We went with Paul and Joe in the end.
It's a shame.
How are you, Sean?
I'm fantastic. Thank you.
What?
What?
What's your title? Token Irish?
Yeah. Irish hunk. I don't know. Let's let the Reddit decide that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should we roll the clip?
Roll it.
Mr. Speaker, the government has been forced to admit that it has lost contact with 85% of the 5,000 people earmarked for removal to Rwanda. Has he found them yet?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, what I can tell the honourable gentleman is that in spite of him blocking every single attempt that we have taken, we have managed now, because of our actions, to reduce the number of people coming here by over a third last year, remove over 20,000 people from this country back to their home countries, carried out 70% more illegal enforcement raids, arrested hundreds of people, closed down thousands of bank accounts, and processed over 100,000 cases, the biggest number in over 20 years, Mr. Speaker. That's because on this side of the House, we want to stop the boats, we have a plan, it's working, and with him, we would just go back to square one.
Sean, what's going on there?
So Keir Starmer is going in on the Rwanda plan, predictably, asking Rishi Sunak where the guts of 4,000 people who were meant to be sent to Rwanda they've gone missing. And Rishi Sunak didn't really answer.
So these are the people who were apparently earmarked to go to Rwanda. So they would have been just defined by the Home Office as fit for removal. They're not meant to legally be able to claim asylum. So they were going to be, well, allegedly put on planes. But Starmer's problem, I suppose, is that people haven't been put on planes. So Starmer was upset this PMQs that not one person has been put on a plane despite the government spending £400 million. But interesting, I've just seen that the president of Rwanda has said that he will give back all of the cash to the UK government if no one is sent to Rwanda, which feels fair, does it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole thing and kind of what Keir Starmer seemed to be getting at was just the disarray of the Home Office. They can't even find these people in the UK. How on earth are they going to try and execute this bonkers scheme?
I thought you were going to say, how are they going to try and execute them?
I did too. I actually went, oh my God. Jeez. I went, okay, and that's Laura's first and last appearance on the podcast. Do you know that more than 400 unaccompanied children have gone missing from hotels as well? So children have been found, either they've been trafficked, some of them have even been found in the edges of Scotland.
There was a couple of months ago, this was raised in PMQs as well by an MP for a constituency that had a hotel that was housing migrants in it, and 15 or 20 children were just picked up and brought elsewhere by people. And there was no real response from Rishi Sunak or any anybody in government to say what they were doing to solve that issue.
I think they've like Rishi Sunak and the Conservatives and this whole Rwanda thing have so successfully managed to paint the image of the people that are coming across the channel as these single military-aged men, that these sorts of issues tend to get quite lost in how they've painted it, and that these are really vulnerable people, and also that military-aged men can also be legitimate victims of war and persecution.
Unless they can be written up as men pretending to be children, then they're not of interest to a lot of the papers, I suppose. Do you want to hear something interesting? So I've pulled up the newspaper front pages from 14th of April 2022, which is when Boris Johnson first announced this plan for to send people off to Rwanda, which you'll remember was apparently supposed to be the nuclear button option. It wasn't ever meant to be government policy. It's the same day that he was facing more fines in the Partygate scandal. So now, look, I don't want to be a skeptic here or suggest that perhaps governments put out other stories to hide unfavourable stories, but it does look like that way. So so the Daily Mail front page, Rwanda plan to smash the channel gangs. Now, the Guardian's front page was Johnson may face 3 more fines in party scandal. For the Daily Mirror, it was the worst is to come for the Prime Minister. The rest of them, Express, Daily Telegraph, and The Independent, have all gone with the Rwanda plan. So it does look like a little plan was pushed out to perhaps distract from the Sue Gray crisis that was unfolding in government at the time.
Even this wasn't serious government policy to tackle an actual issue?
I don't think it was. Yeah. Very good point.
Quite an interesting theory from you as well, that newspapers are towing a political line in the reporting. Be interesting if that was true.
I think you've put words in my mouth there. I'm simply saying that a better scoop was offered to newspapers than covering the Partygate scandal at the time. Did you also know that the Partygate scandal is one of the a lot of the polling extraordinaires, I'm trying to think of his name. What's the big guy who does all the polling?
John Curtis.
John Curtis, that's it. He reckons that 5 points was knocked off the Conservatives for Partygate. Well, that's quite a serious cut through, isn't it?
Just this week,
5
Mr.
points got
Speaker,
knocked off
we
of
had
that. He reckons another 5 points for immigration.
It's
quite extraordinary.
Saying another, because this week he backed the Home Secretary in banning the terrorist group Hizbut Tahrir, despite him personally using the European Court of Human Rights to try and stop them being banned. And don't take my word for it, Mr. Speaker, the extremist's own press release said, and I quote, the Hizbut Tahrir legal team led by Keir Starmer. Now, I know he doesn't like talking about them because they've been a client, but when I see a group chanting jihad on our streets, I ban them, he invoices them.
Because there's 8 questions that I think some of you may want. Well, I'll tell you what, there's some's already gone off the list who wanted them. Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, if he stuck to his position, he'd be voting with us. His former Home Secretary says the plan won't work. His current Home Secretary calls it batshit. His former Immigration Minister doesn't back his plan. Even the Prime Minister himself doesn't believe in it. And last week, another of his MPs said the Tories should admit that things have got worse since they came to office, that after 14 years they've left Britain less united, the country is a sadder place. If the Prime Minister can't even persuade his own MPs that it's worth supporting him, if he himself doesn't even believe in his own policies, why on earth should anyone else think differently?
Laura, what's going on there?
So this is the news that Keir Starmer has backed the Home Secretary in banning Hizbut Tahrir, but as we heard in that clip, Rishi Sunak is going after Keir Starmer on the basis that Keir Starmer represented Hizbut Tahrir in its appeal to the European Court of Human Rights over their ban in Germany in 2008, which they subsequently lost. And I'm just wondering, do you guys think that line of attack has any cut through? Because I saw The Sun used it as well. They went after people he had represented. But to me, it feels like, how kind of lowly do they think of the British public British public, because we know that lawyers don't always believe in the causes that they have to represent. Like, everyone has a right to legal defense. Like, that's his job. Like, does that line have cut through?
What do you reckon?
I think it does, to some extent. Like, obviously, the entire British public is not going to take the line, but I think in giving some idea of what Keir Starmer's role as a lawyer was, what cases that he took up, it will have some sort of, I don't know, I think it is a attack line. Whether it's the best attack line is a different question, but I do think by showing the public what he has taken up in the past, that's going to have some cut through. Like, for me, his but to rear line was, although it wasn't a direct response to any question that Keir, or semi-response, it's still a good way to deflect, if you're the Prime Minister being quizzed on X, Y, or Z, to have in your back pocket, well, he's saying this now, but in the past he's done this. You know.
But then that would also suggest that there's no potential for reform, for I don't know, a change of mind or change of opinion. Not that I think he has. I think if you're a human rights lawyer, that's a case that I don't know. One thing a controversial opinion on the Sun's death penalty expose that was done on Keir Starmer. Was it last week?
Yeah.
So there was a series of cases that were brought to the public's attention, and it was Keir Starmer took on these cases. He tried to defend these people against getting the death penalty while he was a lawyer. Now, a lot of the defense for Keir Starmer from the public came from the opinion of, oh, God, it's just the Sun talking rubbish again. Like, is this the best you've got? Da-da-da. I don't think that's the right defense. I think you should look at those cases and the public can make an assessment, which is, I quite like that the potential new Prime Minister of the UK
is against the death penalty.
Penalty, because we don't support the death penalty in this country. We don't have the death penalty. I mean, I know if Priti Patel had her way, we would have it.
Lee Anderson.
Or Lee Anderson, yes. But we don't. So it feels natural that a lawyer would argue against people being sent to them. And also, like, you know, how many times have people been put on death row and then have been found to have not been guilty? You know, and if you look at the states all around the US, I mean, typically, I think all of the data suggests that states with the death penalty, the murder rate is higher than in states without the death penalty. So it's not actually working as an active deterrent, unless maybe in those states that do have it, the murder rate would just be, it'd be like the purge.
But that's the thing, though, isn't it? If you're associating Keir Starmer in that scenario being anti-death penalty, then the opposite is also true for any other case that he defends somebody for doing X crime. He will then be associated with being against their prosecution.
Sorry, I guess that was kind of the point I was making, that I don't think because he defended Hizbut Tahrir in a legal case that his opinion is that they were good guys. Like, that's just the job of a lawyer.
Also, that there's the cab rank system, right, as well, isn't there? I don't know if it applied to this one. I do remember reading that the death penalty cases didn't apply under the cab rank system, which is that, you know, if you turn up and a taxi comes along, the taxi has to serve you. He elected to defend those people against the death penalty. So that's a choice. And I think that it would be quite good for him to come out and say, yes, I chose to say I don't like the death penalty, or I don't think that these people should receive it. Because the alternative as well is spending your entire life in prison. I mean, it's not exactly nice. I don't know, depends what prison you're in, I suppose.
Yeah.
In Norway, I wouldn't mind.
Yeah, exactly. I was just thinking that if you were in Scandinavia, it's sweet.
Would you rather be in a Norwegian prison or a one-bed in Streatham?
I'd probably pick the prison.
Yeah.
Where would you go?
The prison as well.
Should we do the next clip?
Yeah.
Let's go.
Stephen Flynn.
Mr. Speaker, when people woke up today in homes that they can't afford to heat with mortgages that they're struggling to pay, to news that inflation is once again on the rise, they'll have looked to Westminster for answers. And instead they find a UK government which is tearing itself apart over how quickly it can send vulnerable people on a plane to Rwanda. Surely the Prime Minister must understand that the anger that some of his own backbenchers have towards him is no comparison to the anger that the public have towards his party.
Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, if the honourable gentleman did care about supporting working families to pay their bills, to pay their mortgage, why on earth is the SNP making Scotland the highest tax part of the United Kingdom, where the average, Mr. Speaker, not the wealthiest, where the average worker in Scotland is now paying more tax than they do in England?
Stephen Flynn.
Of course, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the Rwanda bill, the reality is that if you want to stop the smuggling gangs, you should introduce safe and legal routes. But instead, the Prime Minister is seeking to weaponise some of the most vulnerable people in society. It is straight out of the cruel and callous right-wing extremist playgroup. His time in office is fast approaching its conclusion. Does he seriously want this to be his legacy?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, as I said, it is important that we stop the boats because illegal migration is simply not fair, Mr. Speaker. It's not right that some people jump the queue, that they take away our resources to help those who are the most compassionate, that need our most help, and, by the way, Mr. Speaker, are exploited by gangs, and many of them lose their lives making these dangerous crossings. So I completely disagree with the honourable gentleman. The fair and the compassionate thing to do is to break these criminal gangs, and that's why we're going to stop the boats.
All right, so that's Stephen Flynn there. He's talking about the Rwanda bill again. He's come at it from a different approach to Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer's on the where are all the asylum seekers? Where have they gone? Why aren't you meeting the targets that you're setting for yourself? Flynn is going on the morality issue, which is, should you be sending asylum seekers? Should you be your first port of call to be to deport them rather than to provide safe and legal routes for them in the first place? Which, funny enough, is the point that our Ollie Dugmore was making yesterday.
And you a week ago.
Yeah, but, you know, I didn't make it quite as eloquently as Ollie Dugmore.
Yeah, well, he copied you and just refined it, I think.
Well, but you know what's important?
He did say that to me.
There was quite a good comment on it, which said, the blonde one said this, but with a lot more slap on her face. And I thought, that's true. But I don't do my makeup when I do this.
I mean, there's quite a lot of makeup on Ollie to make sure he's not translucent, even when we're doing this. So.
Yeah, that's true, isn't it?
Yeah, it may not have been a factual comment, that.
Yeah, so fun fact, Shawnee, who is the studio manager, actually pats him down with quite a large bronzing puff before...
yeah.
Is that what you call them? Those things? You knew what I meant.
Yeah. I use it frequently.
Do you think Stephen Flynn came off well during that clip?
He always does, doesn't he? Because particularly with these things, like Keir Starmer has so many questions to nail on a point, but in taking 7 or 8 questions to make a point, the point is lost. Whereas Stephen Flynn only has 2 questions. He has to be far more concise, and I think a lot of the time he does come off a lot better than Keir Starmer. Especially with this, you know, like a lot of Sunak's response today was that, well, Keir Starmer isn't backing any of the plans that we have to deal with migration. And then it just kind of becomes repetitive where Keir Starmer will come back with another question when the question has just been slapped down. Where Stephen Flynn will come in, 30 seconds, get to the point, and it cuts through far better, for me anyway.
You notice as well, he didn't even engage in... So when he asked his first question on Rwanda, Rishi Sunak came back with an answer in which he was talking about high taxes in Scotland, and Flynn didn't even engage at all with what Sunak had given to him. He just went straight back to Rwanda.
Yeah. Do
you think that's part of the question?
I think it was real BDE, actually.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Yeah?
So you kind of just scoffed at it and continued on. There was a little bit of heckling from the Tory benches when he didn't engage in it. But, I mean, that only lasts 2 seconds. Well,
the tax thing is interesting because... so Sunak likes to push his line on Scotland that some people in Scotland are paying a higher tax rate than people in England. And he loves going for that line because I suppose, well, it's the obvious moral standpoint between him and Stephen Flynn. But in England, so inflation has crept up again today, and the ONS are pointing towards two things that have helped contribute to that rise in inflation. And both of them are tax increases introduced by Jeremy Hunt. So one of them is on tobacco and the other one is on alcohol. So tax on spirits went up from 3.5% to 8.9%. I mean, that's absolutely extraordinary, a 5% tax rise on spirits. And the alcohol industry today is up in arms because they're upset about it. It's hurting their business. But it's just interesting to hear the Prime Minister talk about tax rises in Scotland and to try and chastise him for that. And then you look at England.
Yeah.
And what? We've got the highest tax burden since, is it the 70s?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you've got secondary taxes. So we're paying a hell of a lot more for tobacco and drink. It's just not looking good. How does the system in Scotland work where you can't buy alcohol after 10 o'clock?
Yeah, it's to do with like, I guess it's kind of all part of like the minimum unit pricing as well. Like it's just to discourage people from drinking as much. But I guess the difference is like when Sunak comes for Flynn on the tax ground is that Scottish people have kind of consistently voted for a party that they know is going to tax them, whereas the Conservatives' whole thing is, oh, we're not going to tax you as much, but which makes it kind of a bad line of attack, I guess.
No, that's a really good point. That's such a good point.
But especially the like alcohol duty and tobacco duty. Could you imagine if Stephen Flynn came back after the quip about taxes in Scotland and he was like, well, actually, you haven't got a leg to stand on here because your alcohol and your tobacco has gone nothing but up, Prime Minister. Like, that's not sexy.
We are smoking and drinking it cheaper in Scotland, but only during a limited time period.
Only up until 10 o'clock.
Or before 10 o'clock. Yeah. That's mad. So do you sometimes go to the shop and you just can't?
Yeah, they actually have like
those
it's like crime scene tape
No.
across the aisles. Yeah, at uni, like our Tesco, it was all just like X'd out with the tape.
Same in Ireland. After 10 o'clock, you can't get alcohol. You can get tobacco though, but you can't get alcohol. So they have like these railings that they just extend out.
Does that not feel nanny state to you?
Grew up with it.
I think this is the one thing I go really IEA on. Like some like really like mysterious backer could pay me to say, and I wouldn't even tell you who paid me to do it. And I would happily stand on any platform and say it's nanny state to not be allowed to buy drink after 10 o'clock.
Well, the workaround for is dial a drink a thing here?
No. What, Deliveroo?
So
what do you mean?
There will be a guy in your neighborhood that everyone has the phone number of that will have a stock of alcohol in his house. And if you're going to an afters or something, you ring him up and say, I need a bottle of vodka, a 24 pack of something. And to your door, he'll come with the goods and you pay him there and then.
Do you know about that?
I do not know about this.
That's not a thing your way. People of Scotland, there's a big industry in dial a drink. You should all get on it.
I feel bad now. I feel bad for saying that the IEA could pay me to say that. I guess if there's a real problem with alcoholism. But then has it shown to reduce or have any impact on alcoholism in Scotland to cut it off at 10 o'clock?
I have no idea. It'd be interesting.
Because you just buy it before 10, wouldn't you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What happens if it's like 9:58 and you're already at the till, but then like Sandy in front is getting a lottery ticket, and so like it's taking a long time? What happens if you're standing behind with alcohol? Do the till just like cut off, or do they honour it if you're
surely
in the
they
queue?
let you through, isn't it?
I mean, I guess it just depends how sound the cashier is. Up to their discretion.
Because when I worked at Waitrose on a Sunday, the trading standards was so strict that you couldn't actually work the till before 11 a.m.
I mean, that was something I was surprised about coming to England, like the trading stuff on a Sunday, like not have that in
You
Scotland.
don't have that?
No, I was like, why is everything closed?
Are you joking?
No, we don't have it either.
That's blown my mind. What, stuff is just open all day on a Sunday?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you've really strayed. You've strayed far from Jesus, haven't you? What about you lot? Are you?
Yeah, same. We're all open on Sundays.
You're open on a Sunday?
Yeah, the Catholic theocracy of Ireland.
You're joking?
Yeah, everything's open on Sunday.
That's not true. I don't believe it. Are you serious?
Yeah, I lived there for a very long time.
Sorry. I mean, I'm more surprised. I'm not shouting at you. Wait, so you can... What about like normal shops? What about like the like, I don't know, clothes shops? They're open?
Yeah.
That's mental.
Yeah, everything's open.
What about the little butcher? Is he open?
The one that got me most was grocery stores not being open. Or open for a very short amount of time.
Yeah, you got to do that fight, haven't you?
Yeah.
You know, when I was younger, I remember all the shops being open 10 till 4, and they've changed that now. It's like, most of them are like 11 till 5, aren't they? Or 12 till 6.
I remember I used to work in a pub in Fulham Broadway, and it used to be a nightmare if we ran out of like lemons or limes and things, because we used to always just go to
Sorry, it used to be a
Sainsbury's.
nightmare when you ran out of lemons. You'd have a lemon emergency.
Well, yeah, the nightmare being that you couldn't go to Sainsbury's because it was closed, so you had to go to the corner shop that was a further walk to get lemons and limes.
Did you get a better lemon at the corner shop, though?
It was a while ago. I can't really remember.
Was
the
it
quality.
Turkish?
No, it wasn't.
Oh, then you wouldn't know.
Yeah.
They've got good lemons, though.
Have they?
Always. Always. You know, my Turkish guy who I used to live around the corner from during lockdown, he never ran out of toilet roll or pasta.
Well,
I don't know where the hell he was getting it from.
He knew it was coming.
yeah, he'd been stockpiling for years.
Yeah. He used to stock up his shop as well from a Range Rover. There's something
That's
going
a
on.
legitimate business.
I didn't care. He had the big packs of toilet roll as well. It was like, like the 20 pack. Sorry, we got really got off the thing here. Have we got another clip?
We have.
Should we roll it?
Let's roll it.
Until the UK government calls for an immediate ceasefire, it is complicit in the horrors in Gaza. Not my words, but those of the head of Oxfam, who, like every single agency trying to operate on the ground, is clear that aid can't be effectively delivered while fighting continues. More UK aid is, of course, welcome, but even when it does get through, it can result in what one Palestinian aid worker calls bombing us on full stomachs. 24,000 people have already been killed. So can he tell us what will it take for him to back a permanent bilateral ceasefire?
Mr. Speaker, of course, we want to see a peaceful resolution to this conflict as soon as possible. A sustainable, permanent ceasefire with an end to the destruction, fighting and loss of life, release of hostages and no resumption of hostilities would of course be the best way forward. But in order to achieve that, a number of things need to happen. Hamas would have to agree to release all the hostages. Hamas would no longer have to be in charge of Gaza, and the threat of more rocket attacks from Hamas into Israel would have to end. And the Palestinian Authority, boosted with assistance, would need to return to Gaza in order to provide governance and aid. That is the sustainable ceasefire that we will work very hard to bring about.
So this was Caroline Lucas calling on Rishi Sunak for an immediate ceasefire and quoting the head of Oxfam to do so for a permanent bilateral ceasefire, which Rishi Sunak did seem to kind of agree with, but with a few more caveats.
Do you think that what would be the best way forward is what he said, isn't it? Mm-hmm. There's that really odd picture, isn't there, from yesterday during Cabinet where David Cameron is leaning over the table at Sunak and they're both sort of like meeting in the middle of the table. And you wonder, we talked about this before, but Cameron once referred to Gaza as an open-air prison. Mm-hmm. Do you wonder if there has been any conversations behind closed doors about policy? Maybe do you think Cameron might be more leaning towards a ceasefire maybe than Rishi Sunak is?
I think it just feels like common sense at this point that you can't bomb your way to peace. Like that's just it's not a feasible position to hold at this point in the conflict anymore. And what Rishi Sunak actually said about bringing back the Palestinian authorities and kind of all the caveats he did bring in, I thought actually he was actually speaking quite a lot of sense because like a ceasefire, just calling for a ceasefire, it wouldn't, or just kind of putting in place a ceasefire wouldn't end the conflict. Like it's a very cyclical conflict. And it actually reminded me of a book that I read at university, which is called Politics in Deeply Divided Societies by Adrian Gulk. And it's all about how you break the kind of cycles of violence and retribution by putting in place really robust democratic institutions that go beyond just holding free elections. It's really good. Definitely recommend it. But that is kind of what it made me think of, is how do you build peace and build institutions and kind of break the cycle of never-ending violence. And also specifically, he talks about how fear of violence shapes perceptions in these countries even during peace times, and how that's really harmful, and how you can kind of break that cycle.
I thought it was quite interesting how it seemed his answer seemed to be the most mature and considered response he's had since everything has happened. I would wonder whether it signals some sort of change in the way the US is looking at it. Because often when it comes to Israel-Palestine, a lot of UK policy on the matter comes from Washington. So I think maybe is it through the looking glass with Rishi Sunak's response to kind of think, okay, even the US are seeing this as they've gone too far, or the time is running out for there to be any reasonable objective in Gaza for the IDF. So we need to start teasing out this idea that we are open to a ceasefire, and whether it's having Mahmoud Abbas or Hamas at the table. I highly doubt Hamas are going to be at the table, but like actually putting it into people's minds that there will be a representative of the Palestinians there. Because I mean, the last conflict, 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, lasted far less time than this one, was just a ceasefire and no dialogue afterwards. So yeah, no, I thought it was an interesting and considered response.
What about Bernie Sanders? What was he up to?
So he was bringing forward an amendment to basically have the US State Department look into whether or not US military aid, brackets, weapons that are being sent to Israel to fight in Gaza are being used in accordance with international law. To the untrained eye, the answer to that would be no. But basically, this was something that would have made the US responsible for anything that was going on. If the bill was to go through, it would make the US culpable in anything that happened in Israel or in Gaza. And then, so it was voted down, essentially.
That would have a knock-on effect to many conflicts, though, wouldn't it? Because you've got the Saudis, a lot of their bombs come from the US and the UK.
I don't know if it was for all conflicts or just that. It seemed like it was just for what's going on in Gaza, because he did reference at one point of several other conflicts going on in the world, but this one being a particularly violent conflict that the US is complicit in. But yeah, so it was voted down. So there's going to be no culpability for the US State Department on that.
I've seen a lot of people online have discovered that they've got arms factories local to them, which they didn't know about. Brighton are particularly upset because there's one very close. I didn't know that. I went to Sussex for years. I had no that is something that I would have thought Sussex would have known about.
Yeah, that's interesting, because Ollie did an Unfiltered episode with Caroline Lucas where he explicitly asked her if she thinks that taking part in direct action against these arms factories is a legitimate form of protest and something to do. And she said yes. She said she wouldn't condemn it. So that's in Brighton, her constituency.
Yeah. She's the MP for Brighton Pavilion. Stepping down, isn't she?
She is.
Eddie Izzard didn't make the long list or the short list. Long list.
Oh, didn't they?
Didn't know she.
She.
Yeah. She did not.
Was it because they said they weren't going to move to the... Oh, no, they weren't already living in the constituency, right?
Oh, was that what it was?
I think that was part of it. Part of it was that they were promising to move there, but they aren't already from there.
Oh, wow. All right. Thanks for listening.